In the heart of ancient lands where shadows whisper forgotten truths, lies the captivating and timeless lore of vampires. This tapestry of myth and reality weaves tales of fear and fascination, immortality and dread, spanning through cultures and centuries, leaving an indelible mark on human imagination. The origins of vampires are shrouded in the mists of time, whispered by storytellers and scholars alike. Some say they are descended from fallen angels, creatures cursed by the heavens for their pride. Others claim that they were once mortals who sought forbidden knowledge and made dark pacts with otherworldly entities, paying a steep price for eternal life. The most haunting tale speaks of a sorceress who, seeking ultimate power, embraced the darkness, only to become an immortal predator, forever cursed to drink the essence of life. At the heart of the vampire's existence lies an insatiable hunger for life itself. Theirs is a thirst that can never be quenched, a craving that transcends mere sustenance. In their eternal night, they feed upon the life force of the living, be it blood, vitality, or even the essence of dreams. This unquenchable thirst is both their strength and their curse, binding them to the shadows and compelling them to tread the thin line between life and death. Legend tells of the gifts and curses bestowed upon vampires by their unholy nature. They possess preternatural strength, agility, and senses, enabling them to stalk their prey with an almost supernatural finesse. Yet they are imprisoned by their own reflections, unable to cast them upon mirrors, a haunting reminder of their otherworldly existence. Sunlight, the bringer of life, becomes their bane, for it scorches their flesh and weakens their powers. Vampires, ageless and eternal, weave a dance through the ages, their paths marked by triumph and tragedy. They are creatures of both allure and terror, capable of bewitching mortals with their beauty and charm, only to reveal their monstrous nature when the moon rises. The lore is rife with tales of seductive vampires who ensnare the hearts of unsuspecting humans, drawing them into a web of forbidden desire and darkness. Vampires are often portrayed as possessing a hierarchy, a lineage of blood that traces back to the first of their kind. Older vampires are said to wield greater powers, their wisdom and malevolence growing with each passing century. Some myths speak of the Dark Father or Blood Mother, progenitors of the vampire race, whose origins are lost in the mist of time. These ancient beings are said to slumber in hidden tombs, waiting for the stars to align and herald their return to a world ripe for conquest. In this shadowy realm, where vampires are both seducers and destroyers, a new breed of legends emerges, the vampire hunters. Mortals who dedicate their lives to eradicating the scourge of the night, armed with ancient knowledge, sacred weapons, and an unrelenting will. These hunters are often tragic figures, driven by vengeance or a duty passed down through generations. The battle between vampire and hunter is a timeless struggle, a dance of survival that spans centuries. Within the tapestry of vampire lore, a thread of redemption weaves its way through the darkness. Some tales speak of vampires seeking to break free from their cursed existence, searching for a way to reclaim their lost humanity. They may seek out powerful artifacts, sacred rituals, or even perform heroic deeds to atone for their sins. These stories remind us that even in the heart of darkness, a glimmer of hope can pierce through. Reality and belief converged in history's tales of vampires. In the early 18th century, in the small village of Kisilova in Serbia, a man named Peter Plagajovic passed away under mysterious circumstances. The villagers, stricken by a wave of deaths and plagued by fear, believed that Peter had returned from the grave as a vampire to feast upon the living. People claimed to have seen him wandering the streets at night, and his widow attested to having been visited by him in her dreams, begging for food. Terrified, the villagers decided to unearth Peter's body and examine it for signs of vampirism. To their shock, they found his corpse remarkably well preserved, with fresh blood at the corners of his mouth and his nails seemingly elongated. Convinced that he was indeed a vampire, they drove a stake through his heart, and Peter's body supposedly let out a blood-curdling scream. In the 18th century, in the Serbian town of Medveja, a soldier named Arnold Paule returned from military service in Greece. Shortly after his return, he met an untimely death. His neighbors began to die in mysterious circumstances, and people believed that Arnold had risen from the grave as a vampire, bringing death in his wake. Fueled by fear, the villagers exhumed Arnold's body and discovered it to be uncorrupted, with fresh blood in his mouth and a ruddy complexion. A stake was driven through his heart, and his body reportedly released a stream of blood as if he had just consumed a victim. This grisly event only deepened the villagers' belief in the existence of vampires, and tales of Arnold Paule's vampiric curse spread far and wide. In the 1970s, the Highgate Cemetery in London became the center of a modern vampire legend. Reports of strange occurrences, sightings of a tall dark figure with piercing red eyes, and claims of animal mutilations fueled a frenzy of vampire hunting. Self-proclaimed vampire hunters armed with stakes and crosses patrolled the cemetery at night, seeking to vanquish the supposed undead menace. The vampire hysteria reached its peak with a widely publicized incident in which two self-proclaimed magicians, David Farrant and Sean Manchester, engaged in a publicized rivalry over who could lay the Highgate vampire to rest. While no concrete evidence of vampiric activity was found, the legend persisted, drawing media attention and becoming a staple of London's supernatural lore. In the late 19th century in Rhode Island, a series of tuberculosis deaths struck the Brown family. When young Mercy Brown succumbed to the illness, her father George and other villagers began to suspect that the family was plagued by a vampire. They believed that a vampire's curse was responsible for the deaths and that Mercy, who had been dead for 2 months, was the undead culprit. Vampire legends have ancient origins, with roots in various cultures around the world. From the blood-drinking demons of Mesopotamia to the Vetalas of Hindu mythology and the Chinese Jiangshi, these diverse myths highlight humanity's universal fascination with the supernatural. The archetype of the vampire that we commonly associate with today, rising from the grave to feed on the blood of the living, found its stronghold in Eastern Europe, particularly in countries like Serbia, Hungary, and Romania. This is where the image of the vampire as a pale, aristocratic figure clad in dark clothing emerged. Vampire hysteria reached its peak in the 18th century, driven by fear of contagious diseases and lack of scientific understanding. Reports of exhumed bodies with preserved features, like the presence of corpse blood, reinforced the belief in vampirism and led to rituals of staking and decapitation. The most iconic vampire figure of all time, Count Dracula, was brought to life by Bram Stoker in his 1897 novel Dracula. Drawing inspiration from Eastern European folklore, Stoker's creation combined elements of old legends with his own imaginative additions, turning Dracula into the quintessential vampire lord. Vampires are often depicted possessing superhuman abilities such as strength, speed, heightened senses, and the ability to hypnotize their victims. However, they also have unique vulnerabilities, most notably their aversion to sunlight, which can burn their skin, and their inability to enter a place without being invited. Bats have long been associated with vampires, likely due to their nocturnal nature and the similarities between their fangs and the vampire's bite. The image of a bat transforming into a vampire or vice versa has become deeply ingrained in pop culture. In the 20th and 21st centuries, vampire myths have undergone various transformations, from the suave and seductive vampires of Anne Rice's The Vampire Chronicles to the brooding and romantic figures in Stephenie Meyer's Twilight series. These reinterpretations reflect changing societal attitudes and desires. Certain medical conditions, like porphyria and catalepsy, have been linked to the origins of vampire legends. Porphyria, a group of rare genetic disorders, can cause sensitivity to sunlight and changes in skin pigmentation, leading some to speculate that it contributed to vampire myths. In the 1970s, London's Highgate Cemetery became the focal point of modern vampire hysteria. Rumors of a supernatural entity roaming the grounds sparked a wave of self-proclaimed vampire hunters and occultists who claimed to encounter the mysterious Highgate vampire. Vampires' immortality and eternal youth have an irresistible appeal, reflecting humanity's age-old desire to conquer death. The allure of a life unbounded by time, paired with the danger of their predatory nature, adds layers of complexity to vampire narratives. In the intricate fabric of vampire lore, the weaknesses of these immortal beings add layers of vulnerability and intrigue. These vulnerabilities, born from fear, superstition, and the enigmatic unknown, have left an indelible mark on the way we perceive vampires. Among the most iconic weaknesses is their vulnerability to sunlight. The image of a vampire recoiling from the sun's rays, their flesh burning, taps into primal fears and contrasts light with darkness, symbolizing life and purity against creatures often associated with the supernatural and shadows. Another captivating vulnerability is their inability to cast reflections in mirrors. This peculiarity stems from old beliefs that mirrors were portals to the soul. The absence of a reflection symbolized a lack of soul or a corrupted existence, adding an eerie dimension to their otherworldly nature. The notion that vampires cannot enter a place without being invited is rooted in the fear of the unknown and the power of thresholds. Homes and sanctuaries were protected from evil spirits by refusing them entry. This concept of consent and the sanctity of thresholds became intertwined with vampire mythology. Crucifixes, holy water, and sacred symbols are often depicted as effective tools against vampires. These weaknesses reflect deep-seated religious beliefs and fears of the unknown. The power of divine protection against malevolent forces led to the idea that these symbols could repel vampires, emphasizing the eternal struggle between darkness and light. The notion that vampires are bound to their homeland by the soil in which they were buried adds depth to their mythology. This weakness is rooted in the belief that a physical connection to one's homeland was essential in death, as in life. Being separated from this soil severed ties to identity and strength, rendering the vampire vulnerable. Perhaps the most well-known method of dispatching a vampire is driving a stake through its heart. This weakness emerged from ancient burial practices where staking pinned down the deceased to prevent them from rising. Over time, it became a method to ensure that returning vampires could not rise again. As vampire lore evolved across cultures and centuries, these weaknesses became integral, enhancing the narrative's complexity. Rooted in fears of the unknown, religious beliefs, and the human desire to control the supernatural, these vulnerabilities have enriched the ever-evolving vampire legends. Vampire legends differ across cultures. The Philippines has the aswang, a shape-shifting vampire-like creature. In Africa, the abayafo is a blood-sucking witch, while in Slavic tradition, the striga possesses vampiric traits. These diverse interpretations showcase how societies have woven their own beliefs into the vampire mythos. Modern science has offered explanations for some aspects of vampire legends. Decomposition processes, like bloating and fluid accumulation, could be responsible for perceived signs of vampirism in exhumed bodies. In this intricate tapestry, the legends of vampires remain both haunting and captivating, whispering tales of the unknown, and forever reminding us that in the twilight between reality and myth, the allure of the night still dances in our imagination.